when you start a business and you go through the process and you build a product and you try to sell that product and you try to maintain your customers and you basically do all the different functions within a business, that experience is so invaluable to whatever else you're going to do going forward professionally and I think also personally as well.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nuske here. I hope you are well, no matter where you are in this wide, wonderful world of ours. Now, I'd just like to say at the start of every call, thank you so much for listening in and providing your feedback, and to my guests for being who you are. For without you, the show simply isn't as amazing as it can be. Now, thinking about amazing things, I'm on the line with Strazzulla. How are you, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Rick. How are you?
I've got 2 feet and a heartbeat, I like to say. I'm not going to complain too much at the moment. How about yourself, Phil?
Yeah, I like that attitude. I think it's a good one, especially for entrepreneurs where sometimes things go wrong in the course of your day. It's good to look at the bright side.
I'd say more often than not, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think most days have some sort of low point, which is why I'm giving up coffee so it's not exacerbated.
Long days and not much getting done. Now, I think that's a really good stepping off point for today's call, Phil, and we'll touch on mindset and having that attitude of an entrepreneur. But before we do that, Phil, what I like to do is give my guests the opportunity to share a little bit about their background, their lifestyle, what they like to do when they're not working. Would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself for the My Future Business audience?
Yeah, sounds good. So I am based in Boston, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
I run a small company called Selectsoftwarereviews where I basically try to help HR and recruiting professionals find and buy the right software. I started my career off working in venture capital, doing early stage software investing in companies all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Catch of the Day in your neck of the woods was a company that I had stalked for a little bit, tried to invest there before Tiger Global beat us.
Mm-hmm.
So did that for a while, then went to business school up at Harvard Business School, taught myself how to program, always wanted to become an entrepreneur, thought that was a necessary skill set, started a small software business that sells to HR, basically helping them recruit through using marketing tactics. And then about a year and a half ago, I hired a GM to run that business, had some extra time, wanted to start another business, had that itch, that sort of irresistible itch that we all have. I love to learn.
Doesn't go away, does it?
It doesn't, at least at this point in my life. I don't know if it will at some point. So I started Select Software just because I love to learn, I love to teach, and I saw a gap in the market where a lot of the HR teams that I talked to were struggling with what tools to buy. There's hundreds of different tools for any different software category. And so I kind of spend my days just researching different tools and writing up free research. We make our money through advertising.
Yep.
Work from home. I've been working from home for about a year. We actually have an office space over in Cambridge, Mass, just across the Charles River.
Mm-hmm.
But I never was somebody who could work from home for whatever reason. I was always, like cleaning or making dinner or something like that.
Distractions.
Exactly. And then finally, I turned some sort of corner in my brain, and I'm just so happy and productive. I get up, I spend the first 3 hours just working. I don't check my email or text message or anything like that. I just write down some stuff I want to get done and get it done.
Yep.
Usually, sneak a workout in during the course of the day, maybe some yoga. I like to play golf outside of work, and actually do like to cook.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a nice little lifestyle.
Are you a good cook?
I'm an aspiring cook, I would say.
Me too.
I'm not a good cook. But The food is good, but only because the ingredients are good. Let's put it that way.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some insight into your personal life. I think it's very important to, I guess, give it a bit of scope to the call, because I know that having your engineering background and looking through your bio when it came through, it was like a hand in glove fit for the show. The My Future Business audience are startup entrepreneurs and small to medium sized business owners that are aspiring to do what you are actually doing. Now, you mentioned moments ago, Phil, about, initially it was not necessarily something that you were good at doing in terms of working at home, but then you were able to work the first 3 hours of a day. What changed for you to suddenly be going, was it a light switch moment for you? What changed?
So I think there was something that gave me the confidence to do it, which was I started using this program called FocusMate, which basically matches you up with another person who's working from home for 50 minutes. And the first 1 minute, you say hi, you say what you're going to work on, you put it into the chat. The other person does the same. You work for 48 minutes. And then the last minute you say, hey, what did you get done? And that's it. And you're on video. You can mute if you want. You can keep the audio on, but there's some sort of weird like social contract
Wow,
that's made.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing.
Whatever
But
works.
yeah, exactly. I'm always open to trying new things, and I think I saw this on Hacker News one day, and I just really got into it. Started doing a couple of these a day, and then just sort of built like the mental muscle memory to
Yeah.
continue to do this on my own. And what I found is that when I wake up, if I don't dive into, the news or text messages or WhatsApp or whatever, and I just sort of like write down usually one thing that I'm grateful for to sort of put me in a good mood, and then three things I want to get done, I can get in the flow really quickly. And when I'm in the flow, it just feels so good to get all that stuff done that you've been dreading, like your taxes or like invoicing or
Uh,
whatever. Exactly. Like all these terrible things we hate to do as entrepreneurs. And it just kind of works for me, that little morning routine.
Yeah, thank you. I sit here and I think to myself, so you can, flex your muscle, your brain muscle. You can set up routines, even if you are historically not very good at self-starting. Has it become natural and intuitive for you to just get up in the morning, or do you still have moments where you need to revert back to this focus software at all?
It's become very natural. I think after a month or two, it just sort of became my habit.
Hmm.
I look forward to it to a large extent because, I'm not going to lie. Like if I get a lot done, sometimes I'll reward myself and say, I'm going to take the afternoon off and like go hit golf balls, or
Hmm.
I'm going to, go like get something that I like getting, like a donut or something, something silly.
Yep,
But
yep.
I've sort of done a good job of telling myself that if you do those 3 hours, you sort of like done for the day, and everything else is icing. And of course, it's 8 o'clock my time and I'm still working, but
Hmm.
theoretically, you could sort of take the rest of the day off if you do a good job in those first 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm loving this call, Phil. Thank you very much for sharing what you're sharing with the My Future Business audience. Now, I wonder, going back a little a bit, your experience as a software engineer and onto computer coding, and then in turn building this business that you referred to earlier, has that helped you become a better entrepreneur? And how is it if it did?
Yeah, so I went down the path of teaching myself how to program, and it was a great idea. I think that if you're going to go and raise venture capital money,
Hmm.
you probably don't need to know how to program. If you have the ability to go raise $1 million pre-seed round from a reputable venture capital firm and hire some engineers and maybe recruit a CTO, you don't really need to know how to code.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to go down that path, and for me, I just see that as a very risky path where you might have the same expected value, but the distribution of your potential economic outcomes from starting a business are very skewed, meaning that 90% of people aren't going to make anything, and 10% are going to make $100 million, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I'd rather be in a game where maybe 5 out of 10 people are going to make 10 million bucks or something like that. So learning to code was a great skill set. It allowed me to get that first business off the ground. And honestly, here and there, I still write code. Like I actually wrote 3 lines of JavaScript tonight for something on my website that, if I didn't know how to do that, I'd probably have to pay somebody to do it. It'd probably cost me a lot of money because somebody's
Yeah.
going to screw me over. So I think that was totally a worthwhile thing to do. To your second question around, starting that first business, I actually had a conversation today with my co-founder about this on that business because, we're sort of going through this interesting economic environment where there's a lot of layoffs going on.
Yes.
And he very, very, very strongly believes that if you build the skill set of an entrepreneur, you de-risk your life. People who go and get a job and their specialty is marketing or their specialty is sales or whatever the case may be, they have to go find another sales job if they get laid off or the company that they're working at goes under or whatever. And if you're in an economic environment, that's tough to do. If you're an entrepreneur and you have that skill set, you can spin up a new project that makes a couple $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
You sort of have all this optionality, and we sort of had a bit of an argument because I'm kind of like, well, there's still all this like downside risk as an entrepreneur. But I think that the sort of ethos of what he's saying is very true, that when you start a business and you go through the process and you build a product, and you try to sell that product, and you try to maintain your customers, and you basically do all the different functions within a business, that experience is so invaluable to whatever else you're going to do going forward professionally. And I think also, personally as well. So it was a phenomenal experience that definitely helped me in my second business.
And this is the sort of content that the audience is looking out for. So thank you very much again, Phil, for sharing. Now, I know that you've written a fairly lengthy article, and I'd like to deep dive into the core of this article. It's about, being this particular founder and running a B2B startup. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into your own experience and how it was that you came to come across all of this information that you've put into this wonderful article of yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I posted that yesterday, and it's actually gotten thousands and thousands of views and shares.
It's a
sort
great
of went
read.
viral, which is kind of nuts. It's funny to look at your Google Analytics for my personal blog, which I don't know, maybe 10 people go to a day, and all of a sudden there's thousands of people one day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the article is all about how do you as a salesperson, or how do you as a founder become a salesperson, specifically if you're running a B2B startup, you're selling to businesses, and really if you're selling something that costs a decent amount of money. If you're selling something that costs $10 or $50 or even $500, like that's a very transactional sale. You're picking up the phone, you're talking to somebody once, or maybe you're not even talking to somebody, you're just explaining what you do on a landing page. What I was really more referring to is how do you start to sell an enterprise software product that maybe costs $10,000 or $50,000, which was sort of my first startup. The average selling price was around $10,000 or $12,000, and I didn't have any sales background. Bit of an introvert, never really sold anything in my life, and so how do you ramp that curve? Is it even attainable to become a good salesperson? And at least when I first started doing it, it seemed like this sort of dark art that, people that used to be on the football team for whatever reason had an innate ability to do.
Yep.
And as I kind of dug into this world more and more and learned about myself and how sales works and everything, I realized that, even somebody who's sort of like an analytical nerd like myself can actually get pretty good at sales, and you kind of have your own take on it, but you can become a good enough salesperson where you can sell enterprise software deals to major corporations before you even really have that great of a product, to be quite honest.
So is this about personality, or is it about process, or is it about understanding the fundamentals of sales? What was that moment in time that you were onto a formula that was starting to work for you?
Yeah, I think, it was a bumpy road. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't, like I woke up one day after reading a book and I was like, I'm a
Yeah, I'm
sales
a
guy.
sales guy. Yeah.
Right. But it was just, for me, I'm a very introspective person. I'm a very data-driven person. And so I sort of leveraged those skill sets to continuously look at what I was doing and iterate on it and see what was working and what wasn't. And then also I built a nice network over time just because I try to be nice to people and share the stuff that I can share at any
Hmm.
given time. And so I was able to sit down with a lot of account executives and just be like, okay, I'm going to give you my pitch. Please just tear it apart and let me know what you think of it. And from doing that a bunch of times and sitting down with our customers and understanding how they thought and trying experiments for email campaigns and demos and recording myself and listening to myself hundreds of times, doing all those things just sort of over time allowed my brain to craft the right pitch, figure out what was the subject line that people would open, what was the sentence that people would resonate with and respond to me, not get discouraged when they responded, hey, what the hell are you doing emailing me? Take me off the list. Um,
I don't remember getting
and
on
then,
this list.
yeah, exactly. How did I get on this? In the days before GDPR, I guess.
Yes.
Um, so it was just all these teeny tiny things that allowed me to eventually, I think, become actually a pretty decent salesperson. And it's kind of like anything else, right? There's no silver bullet to SEO, to being a good programmer, to being a good spouse. Like it's just a lot of hard work and iteration and failure and learning from that failure.
Yeah, there you go. There's some secrets there, some elements that people should be taking notice of is that there's learning in failure. And another thing I took from that, Phil, was that, we're dealing with other human beings. And if you, put yourself out there, show a little bit of vulnerability, more often than not, would you say, Phil, that people respond kindly?
I would say so. And I think that especially as a startup, you kind of have to be vulnerable because it doesn't take too much for people to figure out that you're a four-person company and you probably don't have any other customers, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to be authentic, you want to be honest because one, nobody's going to not figure out that you're full of it anyways. And,
Yeah.
and two, it actually allows you to attract the right sort of early customers that are excited that you're a startup and they want to help you craft your product and your pitch and they're excited about the creative ways that you're solving their problems. And those are the people that we found to be the best early customers. And we would put, the subject that I referenced earlier that really resonated with people was we're a new type of employer branding technology. And employer branding is like this recruiting thing where you use
Yep.
marketing tactics. Um, but basically like the people who opened that and responded to that were like, oh my gosh, like show me this new thing. Like I want to see all the new stuff. And
Trigger
those are the people
words.
I want to attract.
I wonder, Phil, you talked a bit about the online space using headlines and having those, I guess, ways of enticing people who are potentially good fits for your software. How important is it to have a message both in a digital landscape and carry that over into conversations? Is it important to be consistent?
Yeah, the consistency is really important because I think there's again a factor of people are smart enough to do some quick research and understand what fits and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the same. It's like if you've ever applied to a college, grad school, or job, right? If you're saying, hey, I'm a really great, communicator, and then you say something that's like, well, I'm not really a good writer or something like that, like that's inconsistent, like immediately somebody's just going to kick you out of the process. And
Yep.
that's the same with sales. If what you're saying doesn't match the website, doesn't match your email, doesn't match your PowerPoint presentation, you're kind of out of luck. The nice thing is that you as the founder are going to be doing all of those things, and everything should be fairly congruent across your vision for the company. Otherwise, you need to kind of sit down yourself and really think about what are you doing here, and why are you doing that, and then sort of re-architect all of the various marketing materials that you're using.
Yeah, thank you. I always like to go back to that moment in time, that first customer. I'd love for you to share with the My Future Business audience, Phil, what it felt like when you first secured your first customer. How did it feel?
It felt what doing heroin must feel like. Um, is
Bit
you
of a
know
rush.
like Yeah, a bit of a rush. I in high school was a wrestler, and I won the state championship
Hmm.
in my senior year of high school. And I just remember, like yelling and flexing, and you're just full of adrenaline. And it's basically the same feeling as that sort of like amazing accomplishment. You've put so much of your life into building a product and trying to get the world to care about it. And you've probably had a lot of people not caring about it. And you've probably had a lot of stumbles along the way. And when somebody says send over the contract, I remember for me, we didn't even have a contract at that point because I
Oh.
just so far away from being at the point where we could actually get a paying customer.
Hmm.
But when they said, yeah, we're ready to move forward, send over the contract, um, I basically blacked out after that. Like it was phenomenal. I remember spiking my phone on the couch, thankfully not breaking it, but just like, like a
Yeah,
football,
yeah.
American football. And yeah, you just feel unbelievable in that moment. And even, for the next dozen or 2 dozen sales, like it takes a long time for that feeling to wear off.
Yeah, it must be addictive in a very good way. I wonder, with all of this happening, do you find it important to talk to other people, and how do you improve, I guess, your mindset and the things you do in your business?
Yeah, I'm always trying to get better. I love the Warren Buffett snowball analogy
Yes.
where you've got a snowball and you're sort of, it starts off really small and you roll it through the snow and it picks up snow and it sticks to it, and it gets bigger and bigger. And I think that analogy is for your own personal wealth. But I think it also is for your brain and your ability to just do stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and always trying to get better. And so, for me, I'm lucky enough to surround myself with people who maybe aren't necessarily like great, like entrepreneurs necessarily, but they're just like good thinkers, and they're not afraid to give me feedback. And that, could be like my significant other, friends, my parents. And then of course, I'm also lucky in that I've got friends or people who are just in my professional network who have started businesses, and I'll get coffee with them and I'll just run ideas by them. I'll ask really stupid questions to see what they say to really stupid questions, and just sort of elicit real responses that I
Hmm.
can then use to figure out a specific thing that I'm trying to figure out, or just get better in general and build my skill set for when various opportunities come my way.
There's a couple of things that come out of this for me, Phil, is this idea of using your network of friends and colleagues and family, and also using that information to, I guess, listen more than you talk. And have you found that going to network events has helped you at all?
Um, to be quite honest, I haven't. I used to go to them more when I was younger,
Yeah.
and I always thought, I meet the right people or whatever. I did go to them a bit when I was selling our product, and I needed to kind of talk to prospects and meet people that we could sell to. But I find myself to be more gravitated towards more in-depth conversations that might happen over an hour or two long coffee or meal, or
Yes.
maybe walk. And I can really, I can be selective about who I want to spend that hour or two with. And I can dive really deep into a given problem versus meeting a lot of people very superficially who are probably there to sell something. Maybe they're looking for a job, maybe they're a service provider, et cetera. And so I don't know if that's a controversial thing or not, but I personally am not a huge fan of the vast majority of networking events.
No, nor am I. I just I wonder now when you actually are in front of a real prospect, Phil, and you know that they're interested in the product or service that you're offering. How do you prepare? How do you get into the right frame of mind? Do you find yourself getting jittery? What's the process look like for you?
Yeah, I used to get quite jittery, and I just sort of had a routine that I developed to calm my mind because obviously we perform at a much higher level when we're feeling more confident.
Hmm.
And part of that was physical. So I would actually do like jumping jacks and push-ups. Like, I'm not working up a sweat, but maybe a minute or two sort of thing to just sort of get some endorphins flowing, get some
Hmm.
dopamine going. Um, and then, from a mental perspective, I would make sure that I'm prepared and I'm not spending, an hour preparing for a sales call, but I'm making sure I know where this person is in the world. What city are they in? Have they written any articles recently? What are the things that I can call out in the first minute or two of that conversation to break the ice and show that this is going to be time well spent? Because the majority of calls that you have are not time well spent. They're not people that are even understanding where you are in terms of what city. The final thing that I would do is I would think about the value that my product is bringing to this prospect and why I believe in it. Because if you're trying to sell snake oil, you're not going to feel good about that.
No.
And it's going to come up across in your pitch. It's going to just basically hurt your soul, honestly. And so for me, I have imposter syndrome. And even if I'm selling something of value, it's hard for me
Hmm.
to get into sales mode. And when I say sales mode, I don't mean like, slimy sales guy, but just like
Yep.
being slightly aggressive and asking, for stuff. And what helps me get there is saying, look, here are all the ways that you're providing value. Here are your prior customers, why they love it. Here's why you're better than everybody else. And just sort of internalize that because if you're anything like me, you've got imposter syndrome, especially if you're a founder who's selling, trying to get your first couple customers. And so that was always very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. That's great information, Phil, because you know we often forget to focus on not only our value within ourselves and what we're delivering, but also that communication. I guess that sales pitch, if you like, Phil, focusing on the value that you're delivering to your client. Now,
Mhm.
even if that is the case, and you know that there's value on both sides of the equation, what happens if you don't actually, when you're starting out, make a sale? Do you change everything? How did that go for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I remember probably 2 or so months into doing sales, we hadn't sold a customer and I was feeling very discouraged.
Hmm.
I was kind of like, man, I wonder if this is just never going to work. And of course, what I didn't realize or didn't appreciate is that I started doing sales in July, and July and August are pretty bad months to sell, enterprise software
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yes.
Um, and also, these things just take time. You've got to build a pipeline. You've got to reach out to those people. You've got to book meetings. You've got to talk to them. Then you've got to talk to their boss. You got to, go through all these. They've got to get the budget. There's all these different steps that have to happen. And so I luckily, through the advice of an advisor, kind of stuck to my guns and just kept going with the process and making small iterations here or there, but just being like, you know what, it's too early to know if this is working or it's not working. And after another month, we had sold maybe like 3 customers. One of them was Dropbox. That was like a huge win for
Wow.
us.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was really cool. That was a spike your phone moment.
Yeah. I
Uh,
can imagine.
yeah, that was unbelievable. Um, and then another month or two came by, and we had sold a bunch more customers, and it was kind of like, okay, like this is actually happening now.
Yeah.
It's just that the thing that we're trying to sell, it takes a little while, and we just need to be um, a little bit more patient. Now, that said, there are probably some people out there who haven't had success selling something, and you really need to dig into why.
Yeah.
And for us, the why was, well, hey, Phil, did you ever realize that like people go on vacation in August? Oh yeah, right. So that month kind of doesn't even count. And by the way, like blah, 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 here's all the stuff that has to happen, budget, et cetera, et cetera. And this is how much of a novice salesperson I was. I didn't even realize this stuff, right? Because I'm coming
Yep.
from the
Yep.
venture capital world. I've never sold anything. I've never really bought anything of that caliber before. And so that was the why, and that gave us the confidence to keep going down that path. Now, if you're trying to sell something and the why is at the end of the day that your product isn't very good, well, then that's a different thing that you need to fix, or you're targeting the wrong people, or your messaging is really bad, or whatever the case may be. You need to be honest with yourself and try to get somebody to be honest with you about that. I actually wrote a blog post at the time that was entitled "Don't Be Nice to Startups," and it was basically like carte blanche for anybody to be really direct with me. And I would send that to people, and I'd be like, hey, do you have any feedback? And by the way, like, here's how I feel about this. Just like, if you're nice to me, you're being a jerk to me because you're not telling me what I need to know.
You're not being truthful.
And yeah, and that elicited a lot of really valuable feedback.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm thinking about that moment again, that spike in the phone and moment with Dropbox. You must have realised at that very moment in time that you were onto a formula that would potentially work for others. Presumably, human beings are very similar in their wants and their needs within their businesses. Is this now just a matter of remodeling that same conversation and just tweaking it over time and reducing the overall time it takes to attract and convert a customer?
Yeah. So from a go-to-market perspective, that's what it was basically, right? Like we sort of figured out a thing that works kind of. Let's make some optimizations. It's
Yeah.
really easy, to go from 1 to 2 versus 0 to 1.
Yeah.
The problem that we had was we were selling customers, but they weren't successful. So they'd sign the contract, and maybe 1 out of 10 companies would actually like get value out of the product. And it was really because we didn't understand our end customer that well. We didn't understand the persona of somebody who didn't want flexibility. They wanted to be told what to do. And so out of our first 10 customers, probably 7 of them churned the first year, and 2 of them churned the second year, sort of thing. And so within about 6 months, we started realizing this was a huge problem. And it's kind of unbelievable it took us 6 months. But we then sort of re-architected the product so that it wouldn't be such a leaky bucket. People started all of a sudden getting tons of value out of it. They started telling their friends. We had case studies. We had, people that would do reference calls for us. And then it was a matter of trying to scale up the go-to-market plus customer success.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I love how we're hearing from you that this isn't always, roses and chocolates. There's always going to be the ups and downs and the tweaking of your processes, your mindset, your daily routines, and all of these wonderful things. Now, I wonder, Phil, what's coming up for you in your business next?
That's a great question. So the business that I've started now, we're trying to ambitiously map the HR and recruiting software landscape, of which, there are probably close to 10,000 different software solutions, and really pick out what are the best ones. And so for me, we're probably about 20% of the way there, a year into it. And I'm trying to figure out, how do we do this better, faster? How do we scale the distribution of this content? How do we start monetizing more effectively? There's technology implications for that. There's process implications. There's hiring. So it's really just, how do we continue to grow the business that's already there? And then, I'm always thinking of a million different things. I think the sort of brain of an entrepreneur kind of never sleeps. And
Never.
so, yeah, exactly. So I'm doing, email courses, and I'm thinking about raising a small venture fund to do secondary investing. And like,
Hmm.
there's just like a bunch of different projects that I've got going on. And for me, I love to spend 20% of my time on new stuff. And then the other 80% in much more economically fruitful, like hard work.
Well, yeah, at least you're using the 80-20 rule. Now, most importantly, when people want to ask you questions about how you can help them, where are they going to find you?
Yeah. So my business's website is selectsoftwarereviews.com. I've got a personal blog, as you sort of referenced earlier,
Hmm.
philstrazzulla.com with two Z's and two L's. Although I'm a pretty easy guy to find on the internet because there's not too many Phil Strazzullas out there. So you can get me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. If you have a question about something I said and you'd like some advice, I'm more than happy to help out.
Thank you, Phil. Now, everybody was on the call, as is normally the case. I will be creating some links back to Phil at selectsoftwarereviews.com as well as philstrazzulla.com. Phil, thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.